make them great at sales. I'm delighted to do this for you today. We're going to be hitting this for about 30 minutes. I'm going to shove as much content as I can at you here for the next half hour. Hope it's useful to your organization. I know we've got a lot of different groups on today from all over the country. In particular, we have some folks primarily in the trade association space. So if I use kind of trade association lingo, I think that will hit most of us. I'm recording today's session and happy to do so. So if you have colleagues that want to hear some of this content on a later basis, I'd be happy to send it over to you. Here's a little bit of the context of where we're coming from. Quick background on the company. We're in the field selling memberships, sponsorships, ads, and exhibits for associations all over the country on a daily basis, and by doing that, we're making more than 250,000 sales contacts on an annual basis. And that also gives us some perspective, so we are now advising some of our clients on due structure and membership categories and sales and pricing for sponsorships and things like that. And we had the chance to work with some of the best associations in the world, and we're delighted to do so. We've been doing it for about a little over 8 years now. Here's what we're going to cover today. First, I'm going to talk about sales, and I'm really going to call on the question of, are we all in sales in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not in our job title? I want to talk about mindset and the methodology that we approach in sales that's very key, I think, for in particular the non-sales person. I'll talk about process a little bit. Man, you may not think that it's a lot about process, but I'm telling you, I'm absolutely convinced that the process a non-sales person may use is absolutely critical to being successful. I'll walk you through the process that I use here, and I think that'll be helpful to show you how simple it might be. And then I'll talk about some particular resources and insights around how to develop a sales culture in your organization, how to maybe leverage folks like your government affairs professionals or other technical people, some points around talking points and scripting, and maybe even how you get your CEO active in this stuff. So here's a picture of me on the right. I am the worst salesperson of all time and the worst fisherman of all time. I've made progress in one of those, and that's in sales. So let me tell you about how it happened. I graduated from the University of Oklahoma when they still played with leather football helmets, and I was hired to sell radio spots for a local radio station. I think they probably signed me up because I was kind of outgoing with people, or I had an outgoing personality at times. And I had a lot of self-confidence. And what I learned over time is some of those characteristics that we often apply to salespeople actually works against them. This is the era of the non-sales person, or the non-sales person that many of us see in our mind's eye. Because what happened was I was wrapped around my ego, and when I started thinking it was all about me, and I was unsuccessful more than half of the time, I started to feel rejected. And then when I started to feel rejected, I started to have my ego affected, and then I didn't achieve the activities that I needed to be successful, and then the lack of activity made me starve at sales. And I moved to Washington, D.C., and I started working with associations. And once again, I got pulled into, as many of us are here, I got pulled into sales activity once again. I had to change my mindset and my methodology, or I knew that I was going to fail again. And then I got my head around that, and then I started to develop a process that I'm going to show you today, even as a non-sales person, and then I started to win, and now we're, to be honest with you, we're having some pretty good days here of selling and marketing on behalf of our clients. So I want to tell you about those experiences and how you can apply them even if you're not in the sales business. Here's some quick data from my man, Dan Pink. If you haven't read To Sell as Human, I think it's an interesting book even if you're not in the game. because the sales work that's happening in this country is immense. 1 in 9 workers are in sales. 15 million people have identified that they are in the sales business. They're convincing people to buy something. And if you put them all in one state, it would be the 5th largest state in the country. That would be one heck of a state to live in. Oh my gosh. And we also know that there are more people working in sales than are in the federal or state government and in the manufacturing sector. And if there was a narrative, and if you thought and bought into the narrative a few years ago that the internet would change sales or would eliminate sales, well, that's certainly not right, because we see the addition of possibly 22 million new sales jobs by 2020. So although the communications revolution has changed the way we do it, and we have more assets to sell than ever before, I think those are great tools for people that aren't in sales all the time. It's definitely a role that's not going to go away. And what my perspective is, and I believe it, and maybe you'll start to buy into this as well, is even non-sales people spend 40% of their time selling. So think about this in your own association. How much time you've spent persuading, influencing, convincing, directing, by getting the board to approve something, by getting a policy position for your association, by lobbying a member of Congress, by trying to get them to sign up for the annual conference, negotiating a raise with your boss, or delivering a presentation. And we all sell our life, or many of us, sell our life on Twitter, Facebook, and all sorts of social media assets. So we're selling, in effect, even though we might not have that in our job description. So I think any of these tactics may help you in persuasion, in influence, in directing, in helping people. But let me talk about, I think there are 2 slides that I absolutely, and this is my colleague Patty Lehman on the right here. There are 2 slides that absolutely are critical to this discussion today, and this is one of them. Especially those of you that are not in sales on a full-time basis, we've got to get our mind right and our sales methodology right. So let me break down the sales barriers you may think that you might have in your mind's eye. Here's what sales is not. It's not about convincing someone that they're wrong. It's not about convincing someone that of something that they don't need or they don't want. It's not about sprinkling some pixie sales dust on top of them and all of a sudden they say yes and they sign the contract. It's not about hardcore tactics or confrontation. People hate that, and frankly, people hate doing that. I hated doing that, but that's how I was taught, and as a result, that's why I failed. So what I've learned is, and you've probably heard this before, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So all I'm about now, and all about our sales methodology at this company, is about helping people with the right sales methodology. We're looking for a fit. If this doesn't work for you, that's okay. It won't work for us either. I'm all about sorting out people, sorting out whether you're interested or not, and having that healthy separation or detachment in the sales process so my ego's not wrapped up about it. Hey, either way, that's fine with me. It's not about you as the salesperson or the non-salesperson active in the sales process. It's about them. And when you start to adopt this kind of sales methodology, it's much, much easier to do it. And we know that doing it is a big part of it. So once you get this sales methodology right and you're thinking about helping people, connecting them, providing them the information they need, helping them solve problems, and you've got that mindset, then you're much more willing to go through the sales process and work one. But let me tell you, and I know that many of you across the country are saying, oh my God, he's going to talk about sales process? Yuck. I don't want that. My point is, the process is actually just as important as this methodology. Because once you, and I'm going to show you my process, once you develop a good process, then You can align it with your methodology of helping, looking for a fit. The process and staying disciplined helps you stay detached throughout the sales process, because now you're working the sales process, not your ego, because the program is all in place. And once you work the process, it helps you feel prepared. And when you feel prepared because you know the process, then you become more authentic, and that engages trust in the prospect, and that's why you win. Believe me in this. I'm so familiar with the process that I've got in place that I guarantee you I'm the most comfortable person during a sales conversation. And then when I am, I'm authentic. I can convey their concerns. I can overcome objections. It's very powerful. Methodology, mindset has to be right first for the non-salesperson. Then we're going to put a very simple process in place, and here it is. Oh, I want to tell you one thing. Here's why it's important for the process. Because I know through our process and pulling the data from our process that we're closing about 7 of every 10 memberships opportunity we get, and about 7 of every 10 sponsorship. And it takes about 90 days to close a membership, and about 40 days to close a sponsorship. Sponsorship's quicker because there's usually a defined time frame that it's, you got to sign up before the annual meeting gets started, right? But I know this, so that's why the process is important, because you've got to be able to perform activity within this time frame to make the close happen. So that's important for a non-salesperson to know. So let's go back to the process. Okay, so gang, here's my process that I've outlined. This is how I sell to associations, okay? I'm going to give you an example here in a second. So it's very simple. I introduce myself. I'm qualifying them. I determine what needs they have. Can I be a fit for them or not? And then a little bit of negotiation. Again, I've got this deck, and this is being recorded, so I can send it to you at any time. So let's talk about this process, and we'll break it down into these 4 steps. The introduction phase. How do you get the leads? How do you fill up the leads that you need to maybe speak with as a non-sales person? I get them from a variety of different places. This is where the internet really can turbocharge and accelerate the opportunities for you and make you more successful. How do I get leads? I get them through newsletters. I send out a newsletter every week. So do you probably at your association. I look at who opens it. I look at who's clicking on our LinkedIn stuff and looking at our profile. I send targeted emails. Just did it today about sponsorship sales. I look at non-member registrants for annual meetings if I'm selling for an association. I'm looking at webinar registrants. Oops, I just revealed one of my tactics. You signed up for the webinar. Great, you're probably in the process now. I'm not going to scare you off, though. And then we look for referrals. Hey, based on what I just described to you, who might be interested in this? The idea is this. Through all of these different methods, in this introduction phase, I'm not cold calling anybody, because I can guarantee you a non-salesperson or someone that's not in that game every day is not going to cold call. And by the way, it doesn't work anymore. You've got all these methods to be able to generate leads and convert them into sales opportunities. I'm going to try something real quick. I'm going to drag up a part of my Salesforce database. So what I'm going to show you right here is how I send out emails from Salesforce, which is my database, and I can see who opened. Now, I'm hiding their names and their address, so you can't see them because I don't want to bother you about them. But you can see, I hope, that this agreement has been clicked on 124 times. That means they're getting ready. Hey, we're going over the contract, baby. We're going to sign them up. Okay? But you can see what they're doing, and by looking at this, I can identify who's most interested. That's how I develop the prospects and the leads. Okay? The next step is qualification. What I do there is I say, okay, now that I've identified them as a prospect, I'll just send them a note. hey, you might be interested in what we're doing in sponsorship. If you'd like, I'd love to have a conversation about it. Here is a link to my calendar. I'm using a scheduling platform called Acuity Scheduling. Oh my gosh, folks. If there's a tool that I love, it's this, because I'm qualifying a sale here. And if they click on that Acuity link and they schedule time with me, guess what? They have qualified themselves as being interested. And once a two-way conversation begins, they're now in my sales process. So once they've said yes, hey, I'd like to talk about sponsorship, they've scheduled meeting time with me, I'll send them some background information about us. And then the day before the meeting, I send an agenda. It's the most simple sales meeting agenda ever devised. Tell me about you. I'll tell you a little bit about us. Based on that, let's talk about how we might collaborate. And then next steps or no thanks. Either way is okay with me. Remember, all I'm looking for is a fit. Can you see now as a non-salesperson how you could implement this kind of process? So that's the introduction. I found them because they clicked on my email or they subscribed to my newsletter. And then I said, hey, great. Do you want to talk? They schedule time. I've set up the sales meeting. So they're qualified, baby. Now I go through the needs analysis. We have the discussion about you, about me, opportunities to collaborate, and then most often what comes out of this is a proposal, or maybe the membership application or whatever it might be gets developed and sent to them. Now here's a little trick. That's not a trick, but it's a good tactic. And that is, I said, hey, I've got your proposal. Here's a time for us to meet. I wish I was better at this, but I'm learning. So then they have to schedule the time to meet with you or talk with you before you send them the proposal. Because here's what will happen, non-sales folks. You'll send out a proposal, and heck, you'll never hear from them again. So I'm trying to keep that from happening. And then we have a discussion of the proposal. Upcoming, the next slide is the second most important slide of this deck. What I'd like for you to do when you go over the proposal and say, or the membership application and say, hey, here's what we'd like to do for you. I want you to try to get answers to these questions. What's the problem? Hey, they've got a problem with complying with a regulation in California, as an example. What are we going to do about it for them? Well, we're going to connect them to our legislative affair or regulatory affairs expert that talks about this and get them included in all that information. What's the next step? How do you guys make decisions about associations here? When's the deadline? Are you members of other associations? Are you thinking about that? If this doesn't happen, what are you going to do about the problem? The more you know the answers to these 10 questions, the more you're going to know if they're going to join, sign up, sponsor, or whatever it might be. Simple. Not easy. It takes work, but pretty simple. So then we've qualified them. We've sent the proposal over. We're ready for the next steps, and then it's all about negotiation and closing, right? And let me tell you something. In my view, friends, especially non-salespeople, this is the thing that salespeople and sales trainers try to trick you into being the most important thing. It's baloney. They're doing it so they can sell you sales training programs, to sell you their sales book, to get you to click on their clickbait saying, hey, here's how to close. It's baloney, because here's what we've done. Through this process that we've outlined together today, you know about them. You know what they need. You know what the time frame is. You know what may keep them from joining. You know what their budget cycle might be. And now those 10 questions are really helping them get to the process where they're buying. And it's mainly about this follow-through of talking to them about those 10 questions. So folks, as non-salespeople, don't choke on the close, because you've done all the work before now. You've done it. They're buying at this stage. You're not closing them. They're buying. But for those of you that want some kind of closing tactic, I'll give you a couple. Because what I like to do is I just like to ask questions. And a couple of them are here. Hey, based on this conversation, what do you think the next steps are? Hey, it sounds like this works for you, works for us. Based on our decision, looks like you've got the budget. Do you want to move forward? It's all about you. And if it's a fit for you, it's a fit for us, because we do great work for companies or organizations like yours. So that's what the closing is all about. So we've introduced, we've qualified them, we've had a needs analysis, and now we're just going through the final phases of negotiation and closing, which is just loaded with all sorts of different connotations that this is where the high pressure stuff occurs. It's not true. It's not true. Right methodology in your head, right process like we've identified. Now I hope you can start to see how you could actually do this or implement this type of work in your organization. So let's talk about some of the tools that I think you might need moving forward here in the last 10 minutes. Let's build a sales culture in our organization, because, yeah, it is everybody's job, and yes, we've talked about it earlier, where you're kind of everybody's doing it anyway. These government affairs people that say, oh, I'm not good at sales, I don't want to be involved in the sales process, they go to Capitol Hill and they lobby for you? That's selling, come on. Same thing. But let's break it down. I think it's really important to educate and talk about this methodology, looking for a fit, sorting people out, and the process, and have those discussions and provide examples for your non-sales folks. And the people that help with that process get rewarded for it. Make it less of a mystery for your team by having conversations about what you're doing and how it works and how you've been successful. Instead of talking about sales and spooking off your technical experts, instead of saying, hey, we need to help you with this sales call, and they freak out, talk about, hey, we'd like for you to share with this prospect about some of the things that you're doing with your regulatory affairs committee. Hey, we'd love for you to, if you could, connect with this potential sponsor about the ways some other organizations have been able to leverage the sponsorship. Teach them how to share and recommend things to the prospect. Like, hey, my favorite story is how we helped ABC Company with that regulatory issue in food safety in California. That's just a story. That's not, it's selling them. It's actually getting them to buy. It's giving them examples, but you're not forcing them into anything. Discuss with them how to find leads through the events, through products, through everybody that calls to checking to see if they're members. And then finally, this is my recommendation, and I don't think it happens enough to build the sales culture. Get together once a month with your senior leadership. I know some of you, I know some of the people on this phone call today, and my guess is y'all aren't doing that. And all you're doing is you're looking down your nose at the salespeople. So they can't sell anything. Why can't they get people signed up? And you're not talking about what's in the pipeline, what's the progress that we're making, and how can we collaborate together to make this deal happen, or to close more memberships or sponsorships or ads or whatever it might be. So this education and information helps people get more comfortable with the process that's in place. Another tool that you must have, and if you want to call me, I'll get you some sample scripts. I still use scripts. I still use talking points. It must, because, and let me give you the prospectus of this. I have a couple of different scripts, one for scheduling a call, one for the presentation, and one for closing out deals. Because every script has to have a purpose. The likelihood of you being able to get somebody on the phone, talk to them about the value proposition, tell them how much their dues will cost in the organization, and getting them to say yes in one call, like never happens. And oh, by the way, it's not a part of our process anyway that we've identified. So I have a little talking points around each area. I tell stories about how people have benefited. I have answers in those scripts to common objections. Here's what you're going to hear over and over again. No budget, not interested, I don't have time to participate, we're a member of another association. Develop talking points, and I can help you around all of those different areas, so then you got a very concise, consistent message back to them, so you're not trying to figure out what you're going to say. Okay? And then by doing that, I think you can be very successful. And this helps the non-salesperson in particular, because now they've got a crutch. They've got a resource. Don't expect them to do it all on their own by the seat of their pants. An example script for me for an opening, scheduling a call goes like this. Hi Frank. It's J.P. Moery with the American Bakers Association. Hey, do you have a minute? Always ask them that, because if they say yes, then they've let you in. Do you have a minute? Hey, I'm not sure if this is a fit or not, but our baker members, like yours, are really concerned about a new food safety rule that's coming out, and I wondered if you wanted to just jump on the phone and develop a scheduled call so we can talk about that issue just real quick and see if you're interested in it. Bang. I'm not selling them anything. I'm just trying to see if it's a fit for the things that we do. Script a voicemail. 15 seconds or less. They used to say 30 seconds. Heck, I'm starting to think it ought to be like 10 seconds. Hi, it's JP with the Bakers Association. I've got a quick issue you might be interested in. Give me a call. Here's the number. Because have you ever had a voicemail where you leave a voicemail and oh my gosh, you keep talking and talking and can't get out of it? It's happened to me before. Have it scripted out. Tracking. Okay. This is going to cause some consternation here with the audience, but I'm a big believer in you must track your process. Every time we make a call, every time we send an email, we log it into a system. We use Salesforce. Heck, you can use Excel, you can use a notebook. My point is that you've got to track it, or because it may not be your job, or the people that you work with, it may not be their job all the time, they're going to forget, they're going to lose track, and opportunities are going to slip through the cracks because, by the way, we know that it takes 40 days to close a sponsorship and about 10 contacts to do it. So if that work doesn't happen, you're going to miss out. But over time, the data becomes very, very powerful for you. $25 a month for a basic Salesforce subscription. Do it. It's worth it. Another tool, referrals. Determine the timing that a member might be most helpful in the sales process for you. And I use them at the introduction and at the negotiation phase. Introductions like, hey, Joe DeFan said that you might be interested because he was really helped by our compliance program, and you might be too. Hey, give me a call if you want to talk about it. On the negotiation phase, it's a little bit different. I have a former member call, or a current member call and says, hey, you know what? I know you're thinking about membership in the association, and you might be skeptical about it at this point, and I was too, but let me tell you how it's helped me. You just can't scale this because there just aren't enough people that will do it for you. But man, it's the number one sales tactic out there. Can you find a place where a couple of members might make a call on your behalf or just introduce you? Government relations specialists, technical experts are worth the price of membership in the organization. Often. We showcase it as our value proposition, but we never have these folks included in webinars or issue briefings. I want to showcase their content. So we do a lot of webinars with technical experts to prospects so they can really see what the organization's all about, and then they start to buy because they know they don't have that expertise on staff. But don't tell them that you're using them in a sales presentation. Tell them it's a briefing. Showcase their expertise. Short, to the point, very effective. If you want to use your CEO, I've got a minute. I'll tell you how to do it. The best CEOs that I've ever been around were engaged in the sales process. The number one person in this category is Tom Donahue, the best, arguably, with the U.S. Chamber, possibly the best fundraiser in the association space of all time. He got involved in the sales process, but it usually wasn't from alpha to omega, so you need sales support behind them. Identify 5 to 10 prospects that they may uniquely provide some value to the process. It may be because they're large, it's a large prospect or something like that. Staff them up, give them a briefing about what this prospect's interested in, set up the sales meeting, have them do it, and then you do the follow-up afterwards. Then you take over the sales process after that's finished. And re-engage that CEO and bring them in if you have to, and if you need them in a pinch. So that is how I would structure this if you're a non-sales person. Methodology, get your mind right, looking for a fit, develop the process, use mine and tweak it, develop some scripts, engage some of your technical experts, and this is the process that you use. Hey, I love doing these every month for free. I got just one quick ask for you. Will you download my app? I've got all my podcasts, all of our videos, all of our blogs. I think it's pretty useful. Recommend us to an association colleague. I'm doing it right now. Hey, if there's anybody that you think might be able to use some of our information, I'd love to connect with them and see if it's a fit. And then finally, if this stuff kind of is getting your mind percolating about how you may want to do it, our podcast covers this kind of content on a weekly basis. Here's all the ways to connect with us. I'm more than happy to send this information to you so you can send the recording to a colleague or you can talk about it in your organization. Hey, I went 2 minutes over. I hope this was helpful. It's been a delight to be a part of your afternoon. And as a non-sales person or somebody in sales that wants to implement this kind of program, I think you can do it. Keep it simple, keep the methodology right, develop a process, and you too will be a winner in this game. Thanks so much for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.